There you go. So, lovely to meet everyone. I'll hand it over to you, Manu, to open. Sorry.
Uh, okay, so ano ba sasabihin ko? Welcome to our very intimate, informal
Yeah.
chat here on Everyday BA. So we're gonna be talking about, well, Liza's gonna be talking about her best practices on how do you actually incorporate BABOK in your everyday life, diba? Kasi we're all studying for the exam. Well,
Mm-mm.
uh, I passed recently, pero we're, many of us are studying to take the exam. Many of us are still fresh sa atin yung theoretical knowledge ng BABOK, no? Pero how
Mm-mm.
do you actually incorporate it in your professional life? So yan yung
Yeah.
discussion natin. Very interesting topic actually kasi I myself, I'm trying to um, put up yung Center of Excellence namin
Mm-mm.
sa professional work ko. So, I'm very much intrigued and very much looking forward to what you have to share and learn from that. And siguro, mamaya we can have a bit of Q&A, a bit of back and forth about our experiences, what works, what we're having a hard time with, and hopefully learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So glad you guys are here, and let's get right into it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Manu, for that short and sweet, short and sweet intro. Hello, everyone. I'm Liza Laya. And thank you to IIB Philippines for inviting me to have this online session, and to those who joined in and or listening to this recording. Mabuhay. I'm from Melbourne, Victoria, in Australia, and just like what Manu said, following on what Manu said, um, if your learning style is like mine, that I learn by doing, it has to be visual, tactile for me to remember the concepts of Babok. um, then hopefully this helps with your review, because we'll be going through the six knowledge areas. I skipped the other two, the underlying competencies and the techniques. Otherwise, we'll be spending the whole evening, morning or afternoon, whatever time you're watching this. So so I'll focus on the six knowledge areas, and hopefully you pick up one or two tips from this session. And I'm adding like the practical spin to this, because just sharing with you my BABOK, my CBAP journey. I got mine back in 2022, and it took me actually a year to review. Not because I know the BABOK has 502 pages of goodness in there. Um, uh, but I wanted to spend more time to actually visualize, as I've said earlier, to visualize, apply, learn by doing before I take the exam. And then hopefully, while I know the CBAP, ECBA, CCBA are important credentials for you to earn, and it's a well-earned, um, uh, it's a nice credential to have. Um, Hopefully you see it beyond the babok and really apply it in your, not just in your BA role, but in your daily lives as well. So we're kind of going to combine that with the practicalities, the practical application of these concepts. So um, feel free to jump into the chat if you have any questions. We have a very intimate and small group tonight, which I personally prefer. So you get to ask your questions. We get to chat more towards the end. So without much ado, let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. Um, I'm currently leading the technology and digital reforms, um, or the transformation initiatives in the Victorian Building Authority. This is not an advert for Victorian Building Authority. Let me just clarify that. I'm actually a public servant. Um, and this is really like a volunteer speaking engagement, if you will. A little bit about myself. I started off as a software developer. I'm born and bred in Manila. This is actually a breath of fresh air for me because I get to chat with fellow Filipinos. So, natutuwa talaga ako dun. I get to speak in Tagalog then every now and then. So, yay. Um, walang nosebleed. Um, and my career track, it's mainly project program management in the first 10 years of my career. And then the next 15 years, a total of 25, 15 years doing business analysis. Until recently, I went back to program management. So being head of technology and digital reforms in the VBA, my role has expanded to not just manage the BAs, but also manage the whole dev team. So I've got PMs, developers, testers, the works. Really great. Um, my personal life, I'm a mama of three, and I'm a passionate BA. Actually, I'm flex ko lang ng konti, but I don't mean to brag, but we're a proud recipient of the BA Practice of the Year in 2023 in the whole of Australia and New Zealand. Um, I was a speaker at the Festival of Business Analysis in Melbourne back in 2023, last year. I was also the IIBA Melbourne chair in 2021 to 2023. So, para ako si Manu. So, Manu, I can relate to your role, and you're doing great, by the way. That's a bit about myself. Let me just go through my notes here. Um, well, business analysis is really close to my heart because just sharing with you, that was actually my ticket. That was the occupation that I applied for. That's why we were able, me and my family were able to migrate here in Australia. So maybe hindi to migration um workshop or discussion, no? But of course, if I think I mentioned this to Manu when we met Manu in person in December, but December last year. But I don't want to contribute to the brain drain of IT professionals from the Philippines. But if you're interested in moving to Australia, um, I would love to connect. Message me on LinkedIn. We can chat. I can share with you our journey. But yeah, business analyst was actually my role, one of the skilled occupations in Australia migration. But beyond just being my ticket to migrating, it's also become my passion. I really love being a BA. And I really hope that you pick up a tip or two from this session and treat me like your ate or kuya, kasi para gender neutral. Um, Treat me like your older sibling, just sharing with you my journey in the past, and hopefully, you could get a gem or a gold nugget from this session. So let's start off with the first um, knowledge area, which is business analysis, planning, and monitoring. So BAPM. Nilalagay ko yung mga acronyms because one useful tip to pass the CBAP, ECBA, or CCBA is really to use mnemonics and shorten or remember the acronyms. in all those knowledge areas. I actually use this useful. I know Manu has given, the study groups a wealth of resources and information, and review content, but I specifically use the one by Alan Maxwell, who's a CBAP from New Zealand, so Kiwi. I got his free IIBA BABOK version 3 summary and posters. So that helped a lot. It has those mnemonics. But um, going back to the presentation, BAPM, the key takeaway from this knowledge area for me is really to remember to strategize and communicate your strategy. So, what does this mean to me? So, um, if I were to pick a few key points for BAPM, first of all, it would be understanding your stakeholders. So, um, I think we all know Stephen Covey, the 7 habits of highly effective people. One of those habits is to seek first to understand and then to be understood. So, really understanding your stakeholders, empathizing with them, um, and by doing that, you strategize, you plan your business analysis approach around them and around the context of the project. Also, I would advise everyone to never run a workshop, never show up in a BA session empty-handed. What do I mean by that? So even if it's a brainstorming activity, make sure you've done your homework by understanding the attendees. What are they like? There are so many tools and techniques out there. The stakeholder mapping, the onion, um, you've got ProSci, change management, techniques. You can combine them all to prepare for your BA session. So that's one key thing. And aside from stakeholder analysis, you also have a technique, right? Like document analysis that comes in handy as well. So even if it's a open question, open-ended question, brainstorming activity, make sure you do your homework and really plan your techniques well. The other items here are like setting clear expectations on stakeholder involvement. So, BAPM is about strategizing, coming up with a plan, and communicating that plan. So, I'll be channeling my inner change manager here. Not that I'm a change manager by profession, but we're like a Swiss Army knife now. We have so many tools and techniques to think about, even from a PM or CM side of things. So, um, if you're familiar with ProSci, the ADCAR concept, which is an acronym, by the way, the first 4 letters there, ADCAR, it talks about creating awareness and then instilling the desire of stakeholders to be involved in the change. So that's the D, add car. K is, I think, knowledge. So knowing how can they participate in the change in the project. Um, and so yun yung first few letters of the ADCAR, no, the acronym. Why am I saying that? So it's really important for the stakeholder to be aware, um, to want to be in those BA sessions and in those workshops and know how they can contribute. And you do that by socializing your BA plan, your BA approach. So I know some BAs would come up with a plan but not socialize it, or would send invites to workshops and not tell or not mention the agenda. So that is going against the good practices of ProSci, right? Of ADCAR, that you create awareness, you create desire and knowledge. The stakeholders should know how they can contribute well in your workshop. So just remember that. And then um, in, injecting agility in your planning. So, not to be strict about or pedantic about getting all the information you need, just enough, just in time. And which brings me to the fourth bullet point here. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this is AAC naman, the agile extension of the BABOK. Um, there is a technique called real options, which means there are certain decisions that are best to be delayed, to be parked for later. So ASAP is as soon as possible, as we all know that. ALAP is as late as possible. So there are some requirements that are best elicited as late as possible, maybe because it's too volatile, it's still changing, or it's dependent on certain projects or initiatives. So strategize that, all that in BAPM. And finally, of course, check the effectiveness, the performance of your BA strategy. I think that's the last task within that knowledge area, right? Like, yeah, identify BE performance improvement. So always ask yourself, always get lessons learned from your experience, reflect and introspect. So that's always useful. And then a pro tip, you will see pro tips pala in all the slides, but the pro tip is just something that you can apply even in your personal life beyond the BA role. So treat everyone like your stakeholders. So always seek first to understand and then to be understood. So even in your family, I always not always, but I try I make it a point that I apply even the ad car when it comes to the kids. I've got older kids, by the way. Um they're 24, 22, and 16. So my two older boys, well, and a girl. My two older boys are already working. So I try to treat them like stakeholders, meaning I try to understand where they're coming from. If I want to understand what their requirements are, what their business needs, like again, I'm translating it to the to my personal life. But yeah, these techniques are highly transferable, reusable. So yeah, so that's BAPM for us. Excuse me, let me just pause there for a second. Yeah, there you go. And for those watching this recording, it's 11 o'clock here in Melbourne, so um starting to lose my voice, so please bear with me. Anyway, one down, five more to go. We're now in elicit and collaborate, or elicitation and collaboration, ENC. And some tips there is some tips in this knowledge area would be first is cast a wide net when eliciting requirements. What do I mean by that? So, you know how in BAPM we've done our stakeholder analysis, we've listed them down. When I say cast a wide net, not to be too hung up with these are the only participants for my BA workshops. If someone beyond your stakeholder list is or are interested in participating, welcome that, because every stakeholder has good things. I'm sure would have valid or relevant things to say. Um, and casting a wide net. I'm saying that not just from a stakeholder list perspective, but also the type of requirements you elicit. So, um, if you will notice, in elicitation and collaboration, there's no prioritization, there's no shortlisting of requirements in this knowledge area. You're simply eliciting, confirming, and documenting the requirements, which means you don't say no at this point. Um, so yeah, so that's what I mean by casting a wide net. Also, not all requirements come from human stakeholders. So some stakeholders could be sources of requirements could be, your regulatory compliance requirements, some best practice frameworks out there. And real life example is years ago, we automated a huge business process in our organization, and our main source of requirements were our end users. It went well. They were so happy with um, the release. It ticked all the boxes, well, their requirements. But as it turns out, we automated bad process or inefficient process. That's because we heavily relied on human practices. So I encourage you all to explore other sources of requirements. It could be, as I've said earlier, some best practices out there. ISO standards usually would be a good source, and also other frameworks like CMMI. If it's about, for example, processes or software delivery processes, it could be also documents, previously elicited requirements. So sky's the limit. So look for requirements not just from human stakeholders. And then fact check requirements. Now, this is something that we've started to practice, which was a game changer, which is fact checking requirements, meaning we support requirements and their priorities with data. So, for example, our one of our stakeholders or users were asking a certain feature, which makes sense. As it turns out, that feature is being used only 5% of the time, or it's an exception process, not really the norm. So would you want to invest time in building that? It depends, actually. It depends on the change appetite and the budget of the organization. But when it comes to prioritization, I would rank that one of the lowest, no? So fact check requirements, meaning support it with data, support it with volume, transactions, ganyan. And that would make your prioritization not just qualitative like the Moscow, right? But it's really, um, you know, um, rooted in real life data. And finally, anticipate concerns and resistance, of course, and that will be all part of your stakeholder analysis. Now, a pro tip is in eliciting and collaborating, I find that using storytelling and visuals to communicate the requirements, to communicate anything, is actually the way to go. So, being mindful of your target audience and even in your personal life, right? Like, um, I can message me over LinkedIn. I can share this like introspection guide called communication styles. So you've got people who don't really like the details, um, and are impatient when you have a lengthy explanation. The tip for people like that would be just to give bullet points, like your elevator pitch, just a quick 1 minute drill down of what you're trying to say. Others who are analytical like me, um, that's my communication style actually. I prefer to understand. I'm interested in the details. So I don't mind listening in great lengths about a stakeholder's pain points. I guess that's why I'm a PA. So what I'm trying to say here is depending on the communication style of the receiving end, that's what you consider tailoring your storytelling, your visuals. So if you are going to explain the requirements to a CEO, that will be different when explaining the user stories to a developer, right? So keep that in mind and use these techniques, these visual tools to communicate what you're trying to say. So yeah, so that's elicitation and collaboration. The third knowledge area, as we all know, is requirements lifecycle management. And it basically means organizing and managing your requirements. So now I know the knowledge areas are not in a strict sequential order, but if you think about it, you've planned your BA approach. Now you've started your workshops. This is the time where in requirements lifecycle management, where you actually um, manage, trace, prioritize those requirements that you've elicited. So a key thing here is as a BA manager who's been hiring BAs for the in Australia, in Melbourne for the past 5 years. I look for a BA who's really organized and stay on top of so many BA information, so much BA information they elicit in from the workshop. So good organization, self-organization skills. And then, as I've mentioned in elicitation and collaboration, right? The prioritization, the traceability are not part of EC. It's part of RLCM, actually. So, what does that mean? Um, you elicit, you don't say no to all of the requirements. I know there's of course, um, you have to strike a balance there. But what I mean is, uh, it's just risky or dangerous to prioritize requirements as you elicit them because you become biased. You might lose some gems in those requirements. So just be careful and be mindful and try to avoid doing that. Also promote requirements reuse. And Babok is saying reusability is not just reusing it within that current initiative, but also across similar initiatives throughout the enterprise. No, so remember to reuse the reuse requirements as much as possible. And the practical application of reusability is not just to use that same requirement in another initiative, but also reuse forums, workshops that you hold with a stakeholder. So the last thing your stakeholder would want to do is keep repeating themselves to multiple BAs. Worse, multiple BAs from different projects, try to coordinate it with the other BAs. If you're establishing a center of excellence or a community of practice within your organization, make sure the BAs learn from each other and pass on information about stakeholders, about the requirements. Regularly. So, uh, knowledge is really king when it comes to us BAs. And finally, I feel empowered to accommodate as well as challenge requirements and change requests. So I say accommodate and challenge because I notice a lot of BAs I've met are amazing documenters, even analysts of requirements, but negotiation would be their Waterloo or their Achilles heel, if you will. So, what does that mean? They take in, they just say yes to all the requirements they hear from their stakeholders. As a BA, feel empowered to challenge those requirements, but also at the same time, once your challenge, what your sorry, once your requirements are locked in, um, I encourage you to accommodate any changes to them because the worst thing that could happen is, especially in a waterfall fashion, um, you don't want the requirements to change. Then again, what if the context has changed? What if the need has changed? So always remember the value you're trying to deliver there. So try to accommodate um, those changes as well. So again, accommodate and challenge requirements. And then a quick pro tip there is stay self organized. um, we are spoiled with so many tools out there. We've got the Miro board, you've got the Jira backlog, you've got some requirements management tools, Requisite Pro before, back when I was in Manila. So um, there are heaps of tools out there. Requirements visualization like Figma, the prototyping, and screen designs. So leverage these tools to make sure you stay on top of those changes. And there's also some uh, processes that are beyond the tool. So just making sure you jot down your notes on time, you track those changes, etc. So you know what I mean. But yeah. And that is also a useful tip for your personal life, no? So staying organized. The fourth knowledge area, and I'm just mindful of the time, we're close to the end, but because I wanted to open up for some questions here, but strategy analysis. So strategy analysis is like taking stock, doing analyzing the current state, and then developing a way forward, which is your future state. So key things to remember in SA would be, from your requirements, plus your organization's goals and vision, plus the context, plus the landscape you're operating in, you build the current and future states, and then you perform a fit gap analysis. So it's not just enough that you model or you specify the current state as well as the future state, but you have to analyze the gap in between, because that gap will inform your journey from the current to the future state. So I hope I'm making sense there. And in so doing that, you identify the trade offs, opportunity costs, the risks, the workarounds of choosing certain or prioritizing certain requirements. So I know this is such a meaty discussion, the strategy analysis. I know it's just four tasks of the top of my head from for SA. I think it's four. Yeah, it is four. Um, but that really has a strong influence uh, over the direction of an organization. So it's such a critical knowledge area. Um, I'm not saying the other five aren't as critical, but this is really steering the ship, if you will, for the current and future state, and of course, of the organization. And of course, this current and future states can be in different levels of abstraction or detail, right? So, pwedeng screen design, but also it can be so high level, so strategic that it means moving from one application to another. So, such a powerful knowledge area. Just a pro tip there, since it's a powerful knowledge area, you can apply the same mindset in your career, doing a current and future state for your career. I suggest looking at job descriptions, position descriptions, salmonseek.com.au, maybe Job Street in the Philippines. I don't know anymore, but um, looking at your future role and then doing a stock take about your current position, your current role, and doing a fit gap analysis. And then while you're doing that, you're also strategizing, you're identifying the trade-offs. If you, for example, if you pursue CBAP, what's the opportunity cost as opposed to pursuing CPRE? So weigh what's important to you, and also I guess the trade-offs, the workaround. So completely applicable even to personal life, no? So that's really good. Down to our last two, our fifth knowledge area is RAD, which is requirements analysis and design definition. And in a nutshell, I encourage you all to be creative in your BA process, which means, you know, use various techniques to specify, model, design the solutions. Um, Keep in mind your strategic mindset muscles, right? So even if you're developing user stories, doesn't stop you from keeping, staying strategic. And it goes back to, that tip about storytelling, right? So um, sometimes you're in the weeds uh, of um, of documenting such technical user stories. Keep in mind the strategic intent of those user stories, which can be in the form of features and epics, but always keep that in mind in this knowledge area. And I encourage you all to explore unfamiliar techniques. So even in this stage of my career, I still try new techniques or tools just to push the envelope, just stretch myself a little bit. So, and I also encourage you all to combine techniques. So, what you see in the techniques section of the BABOK or the different extensions of the BABOK, you don't have to always follow them to the letter. You can inject you know, your your personal take on that technique. So, so that's what I have for RAD. A pro tip is just like in the strategy analysis, apply these same techniques in personal life. So, case in point, when my husband and I were planning to migrate to Australia, leading up to this decision, we actually applied the decision analysis matrix um, uh, to compare different cities we want to migrate to, so or different countries. So nandun yung at that time we were in Singapore, so we compared Singapore with US, with Canada, Australia. So obviously we're on Australia because that ranked the highest based on our decision factors. So that's one BA technique that I use all the time, and we document that. The good thing is my husband is a project manager himself, so we're in the same we speak the same language essentially, but that really helped a lot. And documenting that in a clean matrix also helps, even, whether it's personal or at work, you go back to that years later when sometimes there are feelings when, did I make the right decision back then? So opening up your decision analysis matrix really helps validate the reasons why you went down this path. So useful kahit sa personal life, no? So that's rad for me. And finally, solution evaluation, which is all about improvements, assessing the performance of the solution you've deployed, evaluating that, and then letting that inform, the next tranche of changes or improvements, and so continuously improve. So in SE, I would encourage everyone to measure the benefits and keep in mind the deltas. The delta is the change, between current and future state. So if you notice in this knowledge area, if you look at the BABOK, there's a lot of talk about measuring the performance. But always keep in mind that the measure is about um, finding the difference between where you are at and where you came from. So mamaya, I'll bring that up again when it comes to the pro tip, applying that to your personal life. But back to SE, there's also some right, y- you know, some advice from the Babok about testing and working around your limitations. So solution evaluation is really being real, like being realistic about the performance outcomes of the solution you've deployed, but at the same time, what is the context, right? So again, when we talk about application to personal life, being too harsh on yourself, because maybe comparing yourself with your peers, um, that's not really healthy. So same with SE, diba? So just keep in mind the context of those comparisons and the journey you've had, appreciating your journey. Um, and also being mindful of sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost fallacy is, if you look it up, right, like it's a bias that you don't want to change because you've invested so much already in what you've done. So same in solution evaluation, and I see this in the workplace, really, like they couldn't move on from that application because they've invested so much in it, when in fact when you look at the benefits or its performance, it's really poor and it's not delivering the results you needed. So remember that when it comes to personal life as well. So just be mindful of the sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost fallacy also applies in investments, no, like your stocks. Sometimes you just have to sell a poor performing stock, even if it's at a loss, because again, um, sunk cost, no? So don't be too attached in that because of the investments you've made in the past. Now, a pro tip there is again appreciating your journey, your delta, um, and that is to me like a personal interpretation or application of um, the solution evaluation knowledge area. So that's our sixth and final knowledge area. Now, final tips and takeaways. Um, Key thing is you use it or you lose it. So the techniques, I think there's 50 of them in the Babok, a few others in the extensions. So it's okay, it's all right to go rusty in some of those techniques that you don't use, but just know that they exist, right? And for the others that are really useful or you really want to explore and try it out, the only way to really be familiar with it is to apply it. So don't be afraid to explore those different techniques and find your practice audience. So use your BA peers and colleagues to listen and provide feedback on your presentation. Also balance done over perfect with a polished execution. So you hear this a lot, right? Done over perfect. It's and that's the battle cry of agile as well, right? Like iterative development, quick and dirty, and then you evolve that solution. It's okay in the agile context, but as a BA manager, I also don't want poor deliverables, right? Even if it's iteratively being polished and developed. So just remember that, just balance that out, the done over perfect with polished execution. Dapat maganda pa rin, dapat professional pa rin yung deliverables mo. And embrace your own individual style. So if you're the type who has a great sense of humor, use that to build rapport with your stakeholders. If you're the analytical type, embrace that. Um, do more data analysis coupled with your requirements analysis. So I encourage you all to do introspection, to reflect on your journey regularly. Like mine, I do it every Wednesday, middle of the week. I just ask myself what um what I've loved doing in the past week, what's challenging for me, what new thing I want to try out, what's a stretch goal for me. So yeah, and continuously improve. So I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted here, seeking feedback, setting personal goals, and iterate and adapt, which I love. What is basically what I love about agile. So there, that's a quick rundown of the six knowledge areas of the Babok and how we can apply those in real life, in personal life, kasi real naman yung BA roles natin. But also highlighting a few tips and tricks. Um, so yeah, so I'll open the floor to questions, and I'm mindful that we're probably um already on our hour session. So any questions, guys, like anything you'd like to ask, or if you have a different experience you want to share. Ooh, hold on, I'll have to
Yan,
you'll have to raise
nagpapakita
your
na ako.
hand.
Si si Jejomar is actually a late joiner. I'm not sure if he's able to talk.
Oh, okay.
But thank you. Thank you for that insightful presentation. Ang daming cool tips and tricks. Some of them relatable, some of them we can take back home and kind of chew on
I
and
hope
see how we
so.
can apply it.
Yeah.
Ganda ng
Yeah.
presentation. Very much
Thanks.
appreciated. Yeah.
Thanks, Manu. And I'd encourage anyone and everyone to connect with me on LinkedIn. Ako natutuwa talaga ako whenever I meet a fellow Filipino who would, is as passionate, like-minded, especially in business analysis. That's why I met up with Manu last time I was in town in Manila. So I'd love to hear your stories. And again, going back to my intro, treat me like your ate or kuya para gender neutral ano. Um but yeah, we can learn from each other definitely. So yeah, we'll make Q&A that popped up. Hold on. Let
Yeah.
me just
Si
figure
EJ.
this out. Ah, okay. You're referring to the DISC model regarding stakeholder management comms. EJ, I'm actually not too familiar with DISC. Maybe I'll have to look it up. But again, goes to show I don't know everything off the top of my head. But feel free to utilize other models out there for stakeholder management comms. I keep mentioning ProSci or ADCAR because it's just so, it has an acronym. Look it up. It's ADKAR, ADCAR. Um, and it guides you like how people um, react to change and how why some people resist. So I use that for stakeholder analysis. So um so yeah, but feel free to use other models out there. So I learned something new here. So I'll look it up in DISC model. So yeah, so I also use the stakeholder matrices, like yung how they influence um uh minsan I know RACI is for project management, but I also use that sometimes to see, who's influential in this requirement. So again, mix and match, no? But good question, EJ. I'll look it up. Yeah. Mindful of the time, Manu.
And of course, you have
Shall
to, yeah. Siguro one more question if anyone has any.
yeah. I think that's it. So thanks to everyone for joining me and listening to me, whether it's live or through the recording. And I look forward to hearing from you all.
Okay. Thank you so much, Liza.
Yeah,
And yeah, thank you. This has been great. Looking forward to talking more.
yeah,
Um, and have a good rest of your evening
yeah.
and afternoon, kay EJ.
Thanks, Manu. And Manu, can I just do a screenshot very quickly?
Oh yeah, of course.
Let me stop the recording first.